I just wanted to give a little garden tour today. We've had a lot of rain lately and it's just beautiful in the morning. So we have one plum tree. It's, we don't know how old it is, but it seems to be quite old. We're not sure it's in the best health. It's a beautiful tree and it just produces the most delicious plums, so I hope we will have it for many years. We'd like to try and clone or graft it if we can, because those plums are really quite good. And then we also have some red currant bushes. There are 5 of those. And then we have one white currant. I've already picked most of the red currants, but there are still a few on here. And quite a few spider webs. And then we have the purple gooseberry bush. And these are starting to ripen. I've tasted a few of them and they were a little bit sour, but they were starting to be pretty tasty. I'm looking forward to those. I'm not sure what to do with them, but they're delicious in any case. And then we have, I'm not sure the exact number, somewhere around 30 mature blackcurrant bushes, which are very productive. So that was the first produce that we sold from the farm, was 6 kilograms of blackcurrants. That was pretty exciting for us, kind of a milestone. There's still lots here. There's stinging nettles growing in here too, so picking them berries can be a little bit hazardous. But I don't mind the nettles too much. I do try to sort of keep the area trimmed around here. I plan to mulch. I'm just having a little bit of a dilemma about what to mulch with. I don't know this stuff too well, but my understanding was that you should keep dead wood away from fruit bushes just to avoid rot problems and fungus. But at the same time, wood mulch seems to be the most natural, and we don't really have many leaves around here to use, otherwise I would have used a broadleaf mulch. But at the same time, the berries produce their own mulch. The bushes produce their own mulch every fall when they drop their leaves, so maybe they're just fine. Lots to learn. So we can head over to the main garden now. And this is the no-till potato patch, which was planted fairly late, so hopefully they'll have enough time. This summer was a little bit strange. And there's a worm. The worms love this setup. Oh, there's another one. These are my rototillers. So basically the idea is that the newspaper and the mulch, they help suppress weeds, and they are worm food. So next year this bed should be absorbed into for the most part, the mulch and the newspaper will be eaten into the ground by the worms and the microbes and everything else in there. And then that will start preparing this bed for other vegetables. And then what I can do to get the veggies started is just pull the mulch aside and expose the soil surface, add a thin layer of soft compost as a seed bed, and then plant the seeds straight into that. And then as the plants grow, they can grow their roots down into the soil, so I don't have to till. And then we have main veggie beds. So I'll just start from the top. We've got marigolds planted here. The original plan for this bed was to have squash here, but since the squash didn't quite work out because of the cold season, we still have some of them trying desperately. I have a hard time throwing plants out, so I just let them try if they want to try. So there's one flowering there, but it barely even has leaves, so I don't expect anything from that, but sure, it can be there. So what I did instead was I exchanged the squash for rutabagas. And there's something around here that really likes those. Those have been eaten like crazy. So whether they grow or not is kind of a question to me. I mean, they're still going. They haven't been demolished. So maybe they'll still be productive. I don't even know what to expect. I'm not sure if I've had a rutabaga before, but it seemed like something that would like it here, so thought I'd try it. And There's some spinach. I think that must be spinach that I seeded just last week, popping up already. So there's some more spinach there growing. So I planted that late. It is first week of August now, so that will be a fall crop of spinach. So in the middle bed we've got kale, red beets, leeks, and bush beans. And the kale loves it here. It has done quite well. There were 2 plants in this spot, but they were both doing so well I just couldn't, and they were such different varieties that I couldn't decide, so I just let them both grow. And it seems to be actually doing better than the rest for some reason, so maybe it likes to have a buddy. I've never grown kale before and never really even eaten kale before much. We're not huge fans of it, but we're learning to like it. It's actually not bad. The young leaves are really nice in salad mixed with lettuce. And leeks, they seem to grow really slow. I'm not sure if that's normal. I've never grown them before. And these are the striped beets. In here we've actually been harvesting quite a few of these already. Oh, looks like this one's starting to bolt, so maybe I'll just let it go to seed. Didn't realize that was happening. So I'll probably have to harvest the others before that happens to them too, because I'm assuming that means that the beet's not going to be any good. Because the plant's energy is shifting towards producing seeds now. So, but that's good, because I wanted to save some seeds anyway. So that's the middle bed. Oh, and the bush beans, I just harvested some last night, and already I can see there's more ready. I'm going to try and make dilly beans, pickled beans. So they're doing pretty well too. And in this bed we've got a lot of Swiss chard, because I really like Swiss chard. I harvested a bunch last night. You can see on this first or second plant here, I've been harvesting it quite a bit for a few weeks already. And it just keeps growing and growing. It's crazy. It seems like every time I harvest it in 2 days it's bigger than it was before. So I'd like to try and keep some of that in the freezer too. And this was this is a second planting. So in the middle row was the first planting of Swiss chard, which has been harvested for a few weeks already, and then the second row is a late planting, which I just planted. I seeded it directly into the garden, I think 2 weeks ago or something like that. So they're growing up crazy fast. They love this weather. And we have some leeks growing in here too. I kind of like this interplanting polyculture method. I think it mimics a natural system more than a monoculture does. We've got some romaine lettuce growing in here too. There have been some slugs on there, especially with this damp weather. But in general, their condition is pretty good. And they're quite tasty. And there's a double one, which I didn't even realize was a double one until I started harvesting it. So that's how much attention I was paying there. And then we have carrots. And these are rainbow carrots. They're so much fun. And what I noticed with the carrots, I've never had luck with carrots before. I tried growing some once and they tasted like soap. And then I was kind of turned off growing carrots. But these have been really, really quite good. One thing I noticed was that they are quite fat at the top, and then they sort of either end or like split or something like that. And I think what it is that I probably shouldn't have planted carrots in the first year. Most likely the carrots want the bed to be a little bit more developed. So I think the compost gave it like a nice soft start, and the carrots were sort of ready for that, and then all of a sudden they hit this layer where there's like a totally different consistency. You're going from soft compost to like an established lawn soil. Because I just did this directly over the lawn. So underneath the cardboard, we're going to have, well, the cardboard's gone now, as far as I know. So So we have the mulch and then the compost with the worms. So there's so many worms in here. There's another one. But then you can see the consistency changes here. There's the old lawn. And some moss and dead grass. And it's decomposing. So I know it makes sense that the carrots are going to have no problems. You can see how now I have to work to dig a little bit, just like with my fingers. But if the carrot's getting, you know, it has almost no resistance growing through here, and then all of a sudden it hits this wall where it has to start to work a little harder. So realistically, I think I probably would have been smarter to wait with the carrots, but you don't really lose much. I mean, we still get carrots out of it. They're just a little funny shaped, and they're delicious. I just love the colored carrots too. Although the purple carrots I did not realize are still orange on the inside. I'm pretty disappointed by that. This is the beginning of our rhubarb plant. It looks pretty sad right now, but it's just getting started, so we're just giving it the year to kind of get settled. We took this from a friend who divided her rhubarb plant for us. She was very kind. So it's just sort of getting over the transplant shock and getting itself situated here. So hopefully we'll have a rhubarb bed. This is the edge of the garden. So what I'm hoping, I put this pea trellis here as a temporary thing, and in the same idea where the mulch and the compost will help prepare a bed for the future. So eventually I'd like to have a whole bank of rhubarb here, and maybe strawberries and asparagus as well, to make a sort of a permaculture, a perennial setup. And then we have the main pea trellis, which was the first one. And it's taller than me. I don't know if I can turn this around and show you. So if I stand next to it, it goes over my head by quite a bit. And the plants are trying to grow up over it too, into the sky. They just want to grow as tall as they can. So this has been very successful. And they are just coming in waves. We've already put quite a few in the freezer, and we've eaten them most days. Pretty much every day we eat some. And there are still so many. It's endless. We really like these. So I just basically tied these two sticks together in a cross shape with a fork at the top, and then the one stick just rests in the fork. And I did the same on the other side. There's a little spider web in there. And then I just dug them into the ground. Put some rocks there just to make sure it was extra stable, but I don't think that was actually necessary. But it is pretty rock solid. And then I just tied some strings at the top. So down at the bottom here you can see there's a stick which has the anchor. Now what I learned was that this was not heavy enough in a wind, that this sort of row of strings was going to act like a sail. So it pulled up and disrupted my seedlings the first time around. So I weighed it down with a rock and a stick. So next year I think I'll do that a little bit differently and make sure that the anchor is much more solid to really hold things in place. I think I overdid it a little bit on this one. You can kind of see that the stick on that one is actually bending from the weight. So I think I tied it a little too tight. I hope it doesn't break. That would be unfortunate. But I'm not really sure how to fix it at this point, because this stick at the bottom, which is quite a bit heavier, seems to be kind of pulling it a little too much. So I'll see if I can loosen that a little bit, but I'm a little bit worried that this one's going to snap. It's getting more and more bent every day. But I built this small trellis the same way, and just tied the two sticks together, and then put one across, tied the strings down to the bottom, and then when the peas were first starting to grow, I just gave them a little bit of help to get them started and growing into the right place, because they kind of go wherever they feel like. And then this one is planted in a way that there's kale and lettuce kind of growing in the shade of the peas because they don't like the hot sun. Of course, I wouldn't have known what to expect. This summer has not had too many days with really strong hot sun, but it does happen. So these are kind of sheltered and they're doing well there. And then this, another section I haven't paid much attention to, so it's a little bit grown in with chickweeds and nettles, but there's some lettuce growing here too. Oh, it looks like this one may be bolting. So that's good, then we get some seeds out of that one too. But there's some romaine lettuce here we've been harvesting as baby leaves for salads, and that's been really good. Yeah, so that's the back of the pea trellis. I also planted some flowers around the chicken coop just to make it a little bit prettier. We dug the fence wire underground a little bit just to protect from predators, so the edges of the chicken coop were kind of just dug up, and I really wanted to reseed that with something, so I put this it was a seed mix called an insect buffet, kind of just a flower strip mix, and I've really been enjoying that. The buckwheat is just beautiful, and the bees really like these ones. I can't remember what they're called, so that's been really nice to have. And if we can, I'd like to harvest the buckwheat too. I actually quite like it in cereal in the morning. These were planted at the same time, and they both looked like this side, but on this side we had one chicken that was getting out and then walking back and forth along the fence trying to get in to see the ladies. So he kind of stomped down a lot of the buckwheat and crushed them, so that doesn't look quite as nice as it did before, but it's still okay. So we have a small bed here. I've covered this one with a row cover, and I can just uncover that. We have some beets. I haven't opened this in a few weeks, or a few days, so I'm not sure what's actually happening under here. Feels like it's been a few weeks, but it's been probably about a week actually since I've opened this one. I haven't been in the garden much in the last little bit. So I realized that this mulch was a little too coarse for seedlings. So on this bed, what I did was just left that part open, but then we had the cat running through it and using it as a toilet, and that was not okay. So I covered it up with a row cover, and the other reason for the row cover was to keep the harsh sun off the seedlings, because this was a bed that I planted a little bit later, and the sun can be kind of hard on young seedlings. They can just sort of fry up, and the soil surface dries out pretty quickly too in the middle of the summer, so it was kind of just to give them a bit of shelter and protection from cat paws. Oh, I think the dog is going through and helping herself to some black currants. I better stop her from doing that. So this bed didn't really work how I planned. I put together this support which was intended for pickling cucumbers. So the idea was I just put these posts in the ground, and then this wire thing that I found in the barn, and the idea was that the vines would grow up the wire, and then I'd be able to go around the other side and just pick the cucumbers off like a cucumber wall. But then the spring this year was kind of cold and wet and late, and I started the seeds too early, and the cucumbers just didn't really work out. So what I did afterwards then was planted some snow peas. But I did not know that snow peas desperately want to grow upwards. And they just do not want to climb on this trellis. So I keep having to kind of like pull them over, and they have these super thick stalks trying to support themselves to just grow straight up to the sky. So this garden has just become a bit of a disaster. It's still productive. There's quite a few snow peas in here. You can see them, but they're pretty hard to find now though, because it's just like a jungle. So, and then back here, the plan was, with the cucumbers that were growing, they would provide some shade, which would be perfect for lettuce. So I planted some lettuce seedlings back here too, You can kind of see there's one. But this also didn't work out quite as I hoped, partly because the cat was under here constantly stirring things up. And I tried putting some chicken wire there, but that didn't stop her. So I just kind of let this part go. I haven't really been working very hard on this bed here. But then I came back and I've noticed that this one pumpkin plant, I don't remember which kind this is, but it's trying. Yeah, there's a little bit of a pumpkin there starting to swell up. I'm very surprised if that actually matures in time. It's already August and it's been getting cold. It was 6 degrees the other night. And there's some mushrooms there too. We've been getting a lot of rain lately, so everything's just damp all the time. Some things love it. The snow peas seem to be really happy with these conditions this year, and in general lettuce and kale and things like that have been doing really well too. So we also have some cherry tomatoes. They had a pretty rough start, but they kind of recovered a little bit. There's a couple in there. Again, like, it's been cold this year. Not a very tomato friendly summer. So not sure if these will actually mature. We're not really tomato obsessed people anyway, so it's not a big deal if they don't. This bed has a few other cherry tomato plants, which have recovered surprisingly well from what they were when I planted. And then we also have some carrots. This needs to be weeded, so this is about the worst my garden gets in terms of weeds. I'm not that picky about it, but I do like to make sure there's some airflow in that, so I just wanted to show this before I actually weeded it to kind of get an idea of how my garden looks at its messiest. I don't really mind having the weeds, but I do notice that they shade the other plants a little bit. The nettles are not bad to have. They seem to host a lot of insects. And I kind of see the weeds as a decoy in a way, because I've noticed that many times the weeds are covered in bugs because those are native plants and that's what the bugs know. And then my plants are left alone for the most part. So there's some carrots growing. But this is a later bed, and it's kind of experimental and secondary. It's not the main focus of the garden. We've got basil here. I wasn't expecting much from the basil because this has been a pretty cold summer, and I started them fairly late too. So there's just kind of a little bit, but they're not doing so well. I think that's going to be something we grow in our future greenhouse. The oregano's doing okay. It looks like it's starting to bloom a little bit. And then we've got some parsley here too. And that's been, I've already harvested that, and it looks exactly the same as before I did that. So I'll have to do another round. And then I've got some sage and thyme. I made some little wooden marker sticks here. I just used a wood burning tool to make the label. This is hyssop. It's kind of growing in with the clover and the strawberries. It's a perennial, so I'm not harvesting anything from it. I'm not expecting anything from it this year. It's just getting started. And then there was a tomato just randomly in a pot. This is tarragon. And some weeds. And again, that one's a perennial, and so it's just getting started, so we're not expecting anything. This one I planted in an egg carton, which I just put straight into the ground. So that's what that strange structure is. And then we have some dill here, which is in a cage because there was some exposed soil, and the cat was constantly stepping on it and breaking seedlings and digging and stuff, so I put a cage around it just to keep her out. Seemed like it worked. And then we have some lovage growing in here somewhere. It's kind of a mess. I haven't been in this one lately. And then this is a common mallow plant. Another perennial herb. And we have some anise hyssop, which has not been doing super well. It just kind of sprouted and then stayed as it was. it was a little bit chaotic trying to get all of this going from scratch the first year. So it'd be a little bit hard to tell, but we have a strawberry patch here too, kind of at the front of the herb garden. So that's a work in progress. I think this part of the garden will be a little chaotic for the first few years, probably 3 to 5 years or so, and then it will start to be really, really great.